The world didn't feel the same anymore. It moved differently. Not broken, not unstable, rewritten. Every bond, every connection, every alpha, all of it had changed. Because of her, because of what she had become. Elena stood at the edge of the forest, watching, feeling, understanding more with every passing moment. The system she once existed in was no longer something above her. It flowed through her now, around her, responding, adapting, alive in a way it had never been before. But something else, something far beyond it, had noticed. It didn't arrive immediately. It didn't rush, because it didn't need to. It observed first, from a distance no one else could feel. No one, except her. Elena's expression shifted slightly, subtle but real, because for the first time since everything changed, she felt something unfamiliar. Not pressure, not dominance, not connection. Absence. Complete. Total. Like something existed outside everything she had touched, outside everything she had become. "That's new," she whispered. The external alpha stepped beside her. He had not left, not since the shift, not since he chose. "What is?" he asked. Elena didn't look at him, her gaze fixed forward. "There's something I can't reach." Silence followed, because that had never happened before. Not anymore, not after what she became. "You mean something resisting you?" he asked. Elena shook her head slowly. "No." A pause. Then, "It's not resisting." Her voice lowered, careful, measured. "It's not there." The wind stilled, not naturally, not like before. Something deeper, something reacting. The external alpha's expression hardened. "Explain." Elena exhaled slowly, because this was different. Dangerous in a way she hadn't felt before. "I can feel everything connected," she said. A pause. Then, "But this," her eyes narrowed slightly, "isn't connected to anything." That alone was wrong, because everything existed within some form of connection, some form of structure, some form of system, except this. "What does that mean?" he asked. Elena finally turned to him, and for a moment there was something in her eyes that hadn't been there before. Uncertainty. "It means..." A pause. Then, "There's something out there that doesn't belong to this reality." Silence snapped, because that was bigger than anything they had faced, bigger than alphas, bigger than the system, bigger than the moon. And as if responding to the realization, the sky shifted. Not visually, not clearly, but something in it moved. Wrong. Elena felt it instantly, that absence getting closer. Not fast, not slow, inevitable. "They're not coming to fight," she said quietly. The external alpha frowned. "Then what are they doing?" Elena's voice dropped, colder, more certain. "They're coming to erase." The word settled heavily, because this time, this wasn't about power, this wasn't about control, this wasn't about evolution, this was something else entirely, something that didn't adapt, didn't change, didn't respond, it simply removed. And suddenly, Elena understood something that made everything worse. "They didn't notice me because I was strong," she said. A pause. Then, "They noticed me because I shouldn't exist." The air cracked slightly, reality itself reacting, because something was getting closer, and for the first time, what she had become might not be enough. The external alpha stepped forward slightly, instinct taking over. "Then we stop them." Elena didn't answer, because she already knew. This wasn't something you stopped. This wasn't something you fought. This was something you survived, if you could. The mark on her neck flared again, but this time it didn't feel like power. It felt like a signal, and far beyond everything she could see, something responded, not with emotion, not with intent, with function, because whatever was coming didn't care who she was, didn't care what she had become. It only cared about one thing: correction, and she was the error. It didn't announce itself. It didn't arrive with sound, or light, or force. It simply happened. Elena felt it before anyone else, that absence, suddenly closer, not moving through space, appearing within it, like reality had failed to fill a part of itself. "There," she said sharply, her head turning, eyes locking onto a point just beyond the tree line. The external alpha followed her gaze. At first, he saw nothing. Then, something shifted. Not visibly, but wrong. A distortion without form, without presence. Like something was missing where something should be. "What am I looking at?" he asked. Elena didn't answer immediately, because even she struggled to define it. "You're not," she said finally. A pause. Then, "That's the problem." The air around that point didn't ripple, didn't react, didn't change. It simply wasn't behaving like reality anymore. A wolf stepped forward, young, unaware, drawn by curiosity instead of instinct. "Wait," the alpha started. Too late. The wolf crossed into it, and then nothing. No scream, no resistance, no trace. He didn't fall, didn't vanish, didn't dissolve. He simply was no longer there. Not even absence remained, because absence implied something had been there. This left nothing. The clearing froze, because that was impossible. Even death left something: a body, a scent, a memory. This left nothing. "What did it do?" someone whispered. Elena's voice was quieter, colder. "It didn't do anything." A pause. Then, "It removed him." The words hit harder than anything before, because that was final. Not death, not destruction. Erasure. Complete. Absolute. The distortion shifted, expanding slightly, not aggressively, not hunting, just continuing. Another wolf stumbled back, fear finally breaking through instinct. "This isn't a fight." "No," Elena said. A pause. Then, "It's a correction." The word echoed again, but now it had meaning. Real, terrifying. The external alpha stepped forward, cautiously, testing, because that was what he did. Measured, calculated. He extended his hand, stopping just short of the distortion. The moment his fingers got close, he felt it. Not heat, not cold. Nothing. No sensation at all. Like his senses simply stopped working. He pulled back instantly, jaw tightening. "It doesn't interact," he said. Elena nodded slightly. "It doesn't recognize anything as something to interact with." A pause. Then, "If it decides you shouldn't exist?" She didn't finish. She didn't need to. The distortion pulsed, not visibly, but felt, and suddenly it expanded again, faster this time, not targeting, not aiming, just growing. "Elena," the alpha said sharply, "I know." Her eyes locked onto it, focused, calculating. Because now, this wasn't about understanding. This was about stopping it, or trying to. She stepped forward, the mark igniting instantly, bright, powerful, reality around her, responding, bending, aligning. The system she had rewritten, moving with her, through her, toward it. I can contain it, she said. Not certain, but willing to try. The energy surged, her influence spreading, touching the distortion, wrapping around it, trying to define it, anchor it, force it into structure. For a moment, it worked. Barely. The expansion slowed. The edges stabilized, and hope flickered. She's stopping it, someone whispered. Then it happened. The distortion reacted, not violently, not aggressively, simply adjusting, and everything she pushed into it disappeared. Not pushed back, not resisted, erased. Her energy gone, like it had never been there. Elena staggered, because that wasn't supposed to happen. I can't hold it, she said, her voice lower now, realization hitting. It's not something I can change. The distortion expanded again, faster, unstoppable, because now it had encountered her, measured her, and determined she didn't apply. This is bad, the Alpha said. Elena didn't respond, because she already knew. This wasn't like before. This wasn't something she could adapt to. This wasn't part of the system. This wasn't something that evolved. It didn't care about structure. It didn't care about change. It didn't care about power. It only did one thing: remove errors. And she was the biggest one. We need to move, the Alpha said. But Elena didn't move, not yet, because something else had just clicked. A realization, sharp, dangerous. It didn't target randomly, she said. The Alpha frowned. What? Elena's eyes narrowed, watching it closely. It took the first thing that crossed into it. A pause. Then, it doesn't choose. Her voice dropped. It processes. And that changed everything. Because if it wasn't choosing, then it wasn't hunting. It was executing. A function. A rule. Something far more dangerous. Because you couldn't outthink something that didn't think. The distortion pulsed again, expanding. Closer. Closer. Elena finally stepped back, not in fear, in understanding. We can't fight this, she said. A pause. Then, we need to understand how it decides what's real. Silence followed, because that was the only path forward. Not power, not dominance, not control. Understanding. Because if they didn't, this wouldn't stop. It wouldn't slow down. It wouldn't hesitate. It would keep going until nothing remained that didn't belong. And right now, that included her, and possibly everything else. They didn't run blindly. Not anymore. Because Elena understood something critical. This thing, it didn't chase, it didn't hunt, it didn't choose. It processed. And that meant it followed rules. Invisible, unclear, but absolute. Stay back, she said, her voice sharp, focused, not emotional, because emotion wouldn't help here. Understanding would. The distortion expanded again, slow, steady, unstoppable. But now they weren't just reacting, they were watching, studying, learning. Nothing crosses into it, Elena continued. A pause. Nothing touches it. The pack shifted back further, uneasy, fear rising, because instinct screamed to run, but running without direction would only delay the inevitable. The external Alpha stepped beside her again, closer this time, trusting her judgment. "What are we looking for?" he asked. Elena didn't take her eyes off the distortion. A pattern. The word hung heavy, because patterns meant predictability, and predictability meant survival. Another branch at the edge of the forest touched the distortion. It didn't break, didn't fall, didn't burn. It simply stopped existing. Clean, instant, no reaction, no resistance. Alina's eyes narrowed. It doesn't interact with physical force, she said. A pause. It doesn't destroy matter. Her voice lowered. It invalidates it. The Alpha frowned. That's not better. No, she agreed. It's worse. Because destruction could be resisted. Erasure couldn't. The distortion pulsed again, and this time it shifted direction. Not randomly, not entirely. Subtle, but deliberate. You see that? Elena said. The Alpha followed her gaze. It moved. A beat. Toward what? Elena didn't answer immediately, because she needed to be sure. Another step. Another shift. Closer. Closer to one of the Alphas. Not the strongest, not the weakest, but different. The older one. The observer. The one who had questioned her earlier. Move, Elena said. Sharp. Urgent. The Alpha hesitated just for a second, because being commanded wasn't something he accepted easily. That second almost cost him everything. The distortion surged, not faster, but closer, and suddenly his arm disappeared. Not torn, not removed, gone. Clean. Mid-motion. His body jerked back violently. A sound escaped him, not a scream. Shock. Pure. Unfiltered. The clearing erupted, chaos breaking instantly. It's targeting them, someone shouted. But Alina shook her head sharply. No. Her voice cut through everything. Because that assumption would kill them. It's not targeting him. The Alpha collapsed to one knee, clutching nothing where his arm had been. No blood, no wound, just absence. I can't feel it, he said, his voice shaking, not from pain, from something worse. Disconnection. Elena stepped forward, but carefully, calculated, because now she saw it, the pattern. It's not about who he is, she said. The others froze, listening, because now this mattered more than anything. It's about what he represents. Silence hit, because that didn't make sense. Yet, the external Alpha looked at her. Explain. Alina's eyes moved between them, fast, processing. She questioned the system, she said. A pause. She stepped outside the structure. Another pause. And now, her voice dropped. The system above is correcting him. The realization spread. Slow. Terrifying. Because that meant this wasn't random. This wasn't proximity. This wasn't weakness. This was deviation. You're saying it erases anything that doesn't fit? The Alpha asked. Alina nodded slowly. Yes. A beat. But not everything. Because she was still there, and she was the biggest deviation of all. So why aren't you gone? Someone demanded. Alina didn't answer immediately, because that was the real question, the most dangerous one. I think, then stopped, because the answer was forming, and it was worse than she expected. I think I haven't been processed yet. Silence collapsed instantly, because that meant one thing. She wasn't safe. She was pending. The distortion pulsed again, and this time it turned, fully, toward her. The air shifted violently.
because now the rule had reached her. "She's next," someone whispered. The external alpha stepped in front of her, instinct, immediate, but Alina grabbed his arm, stopping him. "No," her voice calm again, steady, because panic would only accelerate this. "You can't block it." He looked at her, fury rising. "Then what do we do?" Elena's eyes locked onto the distortion, unflinching, focused. "We prove I belong." The words hit hard, because that was the only way. Not fight, not resist, not escape. Convince something that didn't think that she wasn't an error, and that might be impossible. The distortion moved again, closer, closer, and this time everyone felt it, not as pressure, not as fear, as finality, because whatever happened next would decide everything, whether she survived, whether they survived, whether this new world continued to exist or was erased completely. And Alina, for the first time, was about to face something she couldn't overpower, couldn't outmaneuver, couldn't control. Only convince or become nothing.
It was closer now. Too close. The distortion didn't rush, didn't hesitate. It simply continued, as if nothing around it mattered, because to it, nothing did. Elena stood her ground, not out of defiance, out of necessity. Running wouldn't help. Fighting wouldn't work. There was only one option left: understanding and proving she wasn't an error. "Don't move," she said behind her. The others obeyed instantly this time. No hesitation, no resistance, because now they understood the cost of getting it wrong. The distortion expanded again, slow, precise, like it was aligning something, measuring, processing. And for the first time, Elena felt it directly, not as presence, not as pressure, as evaluation, cold, empty, absolute. Her breath slowed, her mind sharpened, because if this thing followed rules, then she needed to find them and fit them or redefine them. "I'm not outside the system," she said, her voice steady, clear, not emotional, not desperate, deliberate. "I am the system." Silence fell instantly, because those words weren't just bold, they were dangerous. The distortion didn't react, not immediately, but something shifted, subtle, barely noticeable. It slowed, just slightly, and that was enough. Elena stepped forward, carefully, every movement calculated, because now this was the test. If she was wrong, she wouldn't exist long enough to realize it. "I didn't break anything," she continued. A pause. Then, "I changed it." The mark on her neck glowed, not violently, not aggressively, aligned with everything around her, the forest, the wolves, the connections, the structure she had reshaped, all of it responding, showing, demonstrating. She wasn't outside it. She was part of it, central to it, defining it. For a moment, the distortion stopped, completely. No expansion, no movement, nothing. Hope flickered again. "It's working," someone whispered. The external alpha didn't speak, didn't move, because he knew this wasn't over. The distortion pulsed, and then it changed. Not in size, not in shape, in behavior. It didn't move toward her, it moved through her. The moment it touched her, everything stopped. Sound, time, breath, gone. Not paused, removed. Elena felt it instantly, that same absence, that same nothing, trying to process her, trying to define her, trying to decide if she belonged, and for a moment she almost disappeared, not physically, conceptually, like her existence was being questioned, reduced, analyzed, broken into something simpler, something that could be judged. Her thoughts flickered, fragments, memories slipping, identity thinning. This is what it does, she realized. Not destroying, not attacking, reducing reality until it could be processed, and if something didn't fit, it erased it. The mark flared violently, reacting, resisting, but not in the way she expected, not pushing back, stabilizing her, holding her together, keeping her defined. You are inconsistent, the voice came again, but not from outside, from within, inside the distortion, inside the process, inside the evaluation. Elena forced herself to respond, even as parts of her began to fade. Of course I am, she said, her voice strained, but present, because the system changed. Silence followed, not empty, thinking, processing. You are both, the statement landed, heavy, because that was the truth. She wasn't just part of the system, she wasn't just outside it, she was both, at the same time. You introduce instability, the voice again, colder now, more precise, and instability must be removed. The pressure increased, her form flickering, edges blurring, because the decision was forming. No, Elena said, forcing the word out, through resistance, through fading. I introduce evolution. The mark burned brighter, fighting to keep her defined, to keep her real, to keep her existing. A pause, longer this time, deeper, and then the response came. Evolution is unverified. The words hit like a verdict, because that meant uncertainty, and uncertainty was not acceptable to something like this. It required certainty, consistency, stability, and she was none of those things. The pressure spiked, everything around her beginning to disappear. Not the world, her, piece by piece. You will be removed, final, absolute. The external alpha moved instantly, but Elena screamed, "Don't!" Because if he interfered, he would be erased too. She felt it, that threshold, that point where she would no longer be considered anything, just an error, just something to be corrected. And then something unexpected happened. The mark didn't fight anymore. It changed completely, not resisting the process, joining it. Elena's eyes widened because she understood, too late or just in time. I don't need to prove I belong, she whispered. A pause. Then, I need to become something you can't define. The distortion froze. For the first time, truly froze, because that wasn't part of its rules. That wasn't something it could process, because if something couldn't be defined, it couldn't be evaluated, and if it couldn't be evaluated, it couldn't be erased. The pressure collapsed instantly. Everything snapped back. Sound returned. Movement surged. Reality reformed. Elena dropped to one knee, breathing hard, but still there, still existing. The distortion pulled back slightly, not retreating, recalculating, because now she wasn't just a deviation, she was an exception, and exceptions broke systems, not through force, through impossibility. The external alpha rushed to her side. Elena. She lifted her head slowly, eyes glowing faintly, different again, stronger, stranger. It can't erase what it can't understand, she said. A pause. Then, I just became something it can't define. Silence followed, because that changed everything. Again. The distortion pulsed, but this time it didn't advance, it didn't attack,
It observed, and that meant something new had begun. Not correction, not destruction, something else, something far more dangerous, because now it wasn't trying to erase her anymore, it was trying to understand her, and that might be worse.
The distortion didn't advance. It didn't retreat. It remained, fixed in place, watching, not with eyes, not with intent, but with something far more precise, analysis. Elena stayed where she was, on one knee, breathing slowly, stabilizing, because what had just happened wasn't survival. Not exactly. It was reclassification, and that was dangerous in a different way. You should be gone, the external alpha said, not accusing, not confused, stating fact. Elena exhaled, a faint, humorless breath. I know. She pushed herself up slowly, every movement deliberate, careful, because she could still feel it, that thing, touching her existence, not trying to erase it anymore, mapping it. You said it couldn't erase what it couldn't define, he continued. Elena nodded slightly. That's still true. A pause. Then, but now it's trying to define me. Silence tightened, because that was worse. The distortion pulsed, and this time it changed again, not expanding, not shrinking, splitting, not physically, functionally. Fragments of absence, separating from the whole, smaller distortions, controlled, precise, moving outward, testing. What is it doing? One alpha asked. Elena didn't take her eyes off it. Learning. The word landed cold, because learning meant adaptation, and adaptation meant escalation. One of the fragments drifted toward the ground, touching a rock. The rock didn't disappear. It flickered, faded, returned, then stabilized. Another fragment moved toward a tree. The bark peeled away, not physically, conceptually, rewritten, then restored, different, subtle, but changed. It's not erasing anymore, the alpha said. Elena's voice dropped. No. A pause. Then, it's experimenting. The fragments moved again, faster now, more confident, more precise. One drifted toward a wolf, then stopped, just short, waiting, measuring, like it was testing limits, testing rules, testing her. Don't move, Elena said instantly, because now this wasn't random. This was directed, focused, on interaction, on response, on cause and effect. It's trying to understand boundaries, she continued. A pause. Then, where I begin, her eyes narrowed, and where the system ends. The external alpha stepped slightly closer to her, not interfering, but ready, because now everything depended on what happened next. One fragment moved again, toward Elena, slower this time, careful, precise. The moment it reached her, it didn't pass through. It stopped, hovering at the edge of her existence, touching but not entering, like it had learned something, like it knew there was a limit. Elena didn't move, didn't react, because now this was the test. The fragment pulsed, and something strange happened. It changed, not shape, not size, behavior. It didn't try to erase her, it tried to mimic her. The air around it shifted, subtle, but wrong, like it was attempting to recreate what she was. The mark on her neck flared instantly, reacting, not violently, defensively. "No," Elena whispered, because this was new and dangerous. "It's not just studying me." Her voice tightened. "It's trying to replicate me." Silence broke instantly, because that changed everything again. "You're saying it can become like you?" someone asked. Elena shook her head sharply. "No." A pause. Then, "But it can try." And that alone was enough. Because if something like this learned how to operate within the system while still being outside it, there would be nothing left to stop it. The fragment pulsed again, closer now, adapting, refining. Elena stepped forward suddenly, breaking the pattern, interrupting the test. The fragment reacted instantly, pulling back, not in fear, in recalibration, because she had changed the variables. "You don't get to learn everything," she said, her voice stronger now, more defined, because she understood. If she let this continue, it wouldn't just understand her, it would become something worse, something that combined both sides, system and absence, and that would be unstoppable. The distortion pulsed again, but this time differently, not testing, not experimenting, calling. The fragments froze, all at once, returning, merging back into the whole, and then everything stilled, again, completely. Elena felt it immediately, that shift, that change. "That's not good," she said quietly. The external alpha didn't ask why. He already knew. Because whatever it had learned, it was now sending it back, reporting, to something else, something bigger, something higher, something that hadn't acted yet, but will now. The distortion began to collapse, not disappearing, withdrawing, like it had gathered what it needed, like it had finished this phase and was moving to the next. Before it vanished completely, the voice returned, colder than before, more defined. Anomaly confirmed. A pause, then escalation required. And just like that, it was gone. Not fading, not dissolving, removed, leaving nothing behind, except silence, heavy, oppressive, final. Because now they understood. This wasn't over. This was the beginning of something worse, much worse. Elena stood still, looking at where it had been, her expression unreadable, because she knew. "They're not trying to erase me anymore," she said. A pause. Then, "They're sending something that can." The wind moved again, but this time it felt different, colder, sharper, wrong, because something new had just been activated, something that wouldn't test, wouldn't study, wouldn't hesitate. And when it arrived, this wouldn't be a question anymore. It would be an end, unless she became something even more impossible, something even it couldn't overcome. The silence didn't last long. It never did. Because once something like that withdrew, it wasn't retreating. It was preparing. Elena felt it before anything changed. That same absence, but sharper now, focused, directed, not searching anymore, targeting. "They've sent something else," she said quietly. The external alpha's posture shifted instantly, tension locking into place. "Stronger?" Elena shook her head slowly. "No." A pause. Then, "More precise." The difference mattered, because strength could be resisted. Precision couldn't. The air tightened, not around them, through them. like something was aligning reality itself, adjusting it, preparing it for something that needed everything exact. "Stay behind me," the Alpha said. Elena didn't respond, because that wouldn't matter. Not this time. The first sign wasn't visual. It was absence of variation. The wind stopped. Completely. Not fading, not slowing. Gone. Every leaf, frozen mid-motion. Every sound, cut off. Reality, perfectly still. "This isn't like before," someone whispered. Elena's eyes narrowed, because they were right. This wasn't distortion. This wasn't absence spreading. This was something else. Something controlled. Something exact. Then it appeared. Not like the previous one. No distortion, no warping, no visible anomaly. Just a figure, standing there, where nothing had been a second ago. Humanoid, defined, perfectly still. Too still, because nothing should be that still. It didn't flicker, didn't shift, didn't breathe. It simply existed. "What is that?" the Alpha muttered. Elena didn't answer immediately, because she felt it. Deep, clear, terrifying. "That's not the same thing," she said. A pause. Then, "That's something built from it." The figure moved, not stepping, not turning, just changing position. Closer, without transition, without motion. The ground didn't react, the air didn't shift. It just was closer now. "That's worse," the Alpha said. Elena nodded slowly. "Yes, because this had form, structure, presence. It wasn't bound by absence anymore. It had been given something new, something that allowed it to operate within reality while still being outside it. "You are the anomaly," it said. The voice, flat, perfectly neutral. No tone, no emotion, no variation. The Alphas froze, because that voice was wrong. Not deep, not powerful, not threatening, just absolute. Elena stepped forward, slowly, because now this was direct. No more testing, no more observation. "This is escalation," she said. The figure tilted its head slightly, a minimal movement, precise. "Correction protocol updated," it replied. A pause. Then, "Previous method ineffective." The words landed cold, because that meant it had learned, and now it had adapted. Elena's mark flared, reacting instantly. Because this was something new. "You can't erase me," she said, not as confidence, as fact. The figure didn't react, didn't argue, didn't acknowledge. "Erasure is no longer required." Silence broke, because that was worse. The external Alpha stepped forward, tension rising. "Then what are you doing?" The figure turned its head slightly toward him, and for the first time, something happened. The Alpha's body locked, completely, mid-breath, mid-motion, frozen, not by force, not by pressure, by removal of permission. "You are irrelevant," the figure said. And just like that, the Alpha dropped, not dead, not erased, disconnected, unable to act, unable to move, unable to exist meaningfully in that moment. Elena's eyes widened slightly, because that was new. It wasn't erasing, it was bypassing, neutralizing. "You've changed the method," she said. The figure turned back to her. "Yes." A pause. Then, "You cannot be removed."
Another pause, so slight it barely existed. You will be contained. The word hit harder than anything before, because containment meant permanence, a state worse than erasure, trapped, defined, controlled, forever. The figure stepped forward, this time actually stepping, reality adjusting to allow it, adapting around it, because now it fit. I won't let you, Elena said, the mark igniting fully, power surging, the system bending around her, responding, fighting. But the figure didn't resist, didn't react, didn't counter. It simply continued, because resistance was irrelevant. Its hand lifted slightly, and the space around Elena collapsed, not crushing, not compressing, defining, constraining, reducing possibilities, reducing outcomes, reducing her into something measurable, something containable. Elena felt it instantly. Her power, not gone, limited, forced into boundaries. You see, the figure said, calm, unchanging. You can exist. A pause. Then, but only within parameters. The pressure increased, her movement slowing, her influence shrinking, because it wasn't trying to erase her, it was rewriting her limits, and that might actually work. The external alpha forced himself up, barely, fighting whatever held him. Elena! She didn't look at him, because she couldn't, because every part of her was focused on resisting this, on not being defined, on not being reduced, on not being contained. You adapted, she said, strained but clear. The figure nodded slightly. Yes. A pause. Then, we improved. The words echoed, because that was the real threat. Not power, not erasure, improvement. A system that learned, that adapted, that refined itself to eliminate failure, to eliminate anomalies, to eliminate her. Elena's vision flickered, not from loss, from restriction, from being forced into something smaller, something controlled. And then, something inside her shifted. Again, not power, not force, something deeper, something that had already changed once before. You're still making the same mistake, she whispered. The figure didn't react. Explain. Elena's eyes lifted slowly, and this time there was something new in them. Not just difference, not just evolution, something else. You're trying to define me. A pause. Then, and I already stopped being something that can be defined. The mark exploded with light, not outward, inward, collapsing into her, condensing, transforming, and the space trying to contain her cracked. For the first time, the figure stopped moving, because something had gone outside its calculations, outside its parameters, outside its design, and that was not supposed to happen. Elena stepped forward, inside the containment, breaking it, not with force, but by no longer fitting inside it. And that changed everything. Again.
The containment didn't shatter. It failed, quietly, subtly, completely. The space that had been closing around Elena fractured without breaking, because there was nothing left to hold, nothing left to define, nothing left to measure. She stepped forward again, and this time, the system didn't respond, not because it couldn't, because it no longer knew how. The figure remained still. For the first time, not calculating, not adapting, paused. You changed again, it said, flat, precise, but slower now, like something in its process was lagging. Alina didn't answer immediately, because she felt it, that shift, that transformation, and the cost behind it. I didn't change, she said quietly. A pause. Then, I removed the parts of me you could understand. Silence followed, because that wasn't evolution. That was subtraction, and subtraction had consequences. The external alpha forced himself fully upright, still unstable, still partially disconnected, but present. Elena, what did you do? He asked. Elena's gaze flickered briefly toward him, and for a moment there was something missing, something human, something familiar. I simplified, she said. The word felt wrong, because it wasn't simple at all. It was extreme. She hadn't become stronger. She had become less predictable, less structured, less defined, less real. And that was why it worked. The figure stepped forward again, carefully, because now it wasn't certain, and uncertainty was failure. You are degrading, it said. A pause. Then, instability increasing. Elena nodded slightly. Yes. Another step forward. I told you. Her voice softer now, but sharper. I'm not something you can contain. The figure lifted its hand in, trying, reapplying parameters, rebuilding limits, recalculating structure. But this time, the system didn't hold. The moment it tried to define her, it lost track of her not visually, conceptually, like trying to hold water with something full of holes. You are inconsistent, it repeated. But this time, it wasn't a statement. It was an error, a flaw, a problem it couldn't solve. Elena moved again, closer now, inside its range, inside its reach, and it did nothing, because it didn't know what to do anymore. You were designed to fix things, she said. A pause. Then, but I'm not something broken. Another step. And I'm not something stable. Another. I'm something new. The figure froze again, not by force, by limitation, its entire function dependent on structure, on rules, on definitions, and she no longer fit any of them. The external alpha watched, realizing something far worse than victory. She wasn't just winning, she was disappearing, not physically, but fundamentally. You're losing yourself, he said. Alina stopped, just for a moment, because those words still reached something, deep, fading, but not gone. Maybe, she said quietly. A pause. Then, but it's the only way. And that was the cost. Not power, not pain. Identity. She was trading it, piece by piece, to become something untouchable. The figure attempted one last recalibration. Energy shifted, reality aligned, parameters redefined. It tried everything it had, and failed. You cannot be processed. Final. Absolute. A statement and a conclusion. Elena stepped directly in front of it now, close enough to touch, but she didn't, because she didn't need to.
"You can stop now," she said. The figure didn't respond, because it couldn't. Its purpose invalid, its function incomplete, its logic broken. And slowly it began to fade, not erased, not destroyed, deactivated. Because without a solution, there was no action, and without action, there was no purpose. "You are unresolved," it said one last time. A pause. Then, escalation beyond current layer required. And then, it was gone. The stillness broke instantly, wind returning, sound crashing back, reality stabilizing. But Elena didn't move. She stood there, silent, still, different. The external alpha stepped toward her carefully. "Elena." She didn't respond, not immediately, because something was wrong. Not outside, inside. "Can you hear me?" he asked. A pause. Then she turned, slowly, and her eyes weren't the same. Not just different, empty in places, like parts of her had been removed. "I won," she said, her voice calm, flat, but something was missing. Emotion, connection, self. The alpha's chest tightened, because that wasn't victory. That was loss. "You're still here," he said, trying, holding on to something. Elena tilted her head slightly, as if considering the statement, processing it, evaluating it. "I think so," she replied. And that was worse than anything before, because now she wasn't sure, and if she kept going like this, there would be nothing left of her to save. The wind moved again, but this time it carried something else, faint, distant, but unmistakable. That presence, not the distortion, not the figure, something above both, something that had been watching everything, and now it was no longer just watching. Elena felt it, even in her fragmented state, and for the first time since her transformation, something like fear returned. Small, distant, but real. "They're still coming," she whispered. The alpha's expression hardened. "What now?" Elena looked up, toward the sky, toward something far beyond it, and this time her answer wasn't certain. "We haven't reached the top yet." Silence followed, because that meant everything they had faced so far was just the beginning, and whatever came next wouldn't just test her power, it would test what was left of her, and whether there was anything left worth saving.
It didn't arrive because it had always been there. That was the first thing Elena understood. Not something approaching, not something descending, something revealing itself. The sky didn't change, the forest didn't shift, reality didn't distort, and yet everything felt different, because now they were aware of it, a presence so vast it didn't need to move, so absolute it didn't need to act. It simply was. Elena stood still, her fragmented awareness struggling to process it, because this wasn't like anything before, not absence, not system, not adaptation. This was the source. "You're not part of the system," she said quietly. A pause. Then, "You are the system." Silence answered her, but not empty, acknowledging, not with words, with truth. The external alpha felt it too, but unlike Elena, he couldn't understand it, couldn't interpret it, couldn't survive it. His body tensed, then dropped to one knee, not forced, overwhelmed, because being in the presence of something like that was too much. "What is this?" he forced out. Elena didn't answer because she was already engaged, already being seen, already being evaluated. "You are unstable." The voice didn't echo, didn't resonate. It simply existed in her mind, everywhere at once. Absolute, final. Elena didn't react because she couldn't afford to. "Everything changes," she replied, her voice quieter now, but still hers, still present, still fighting. A pause followed, but not like before, not processing, not calculating, considering. And that alone was terrifying, because this wasn't a system that reacted. This was something that decided. "You have altered structure," the voice again, not questioning, not accusing, recognizing. "Yes," Elena said, a breath, then, "I made it better." Silence. Longer this time, deeper, because now this wasn't about definition or containment or correction. This was the judgment, and judgment came with consequences. "You introduced variables." A pause. "Variables introduce uncertainty." Another pause. "Uncertainty reduces stability." Each word landed like weight, like reality itself was aligning to those statements. Elena felt it, her existence being measured, not against rules, against purpose. "You think stability is the goal," she said, her voice gaining strength, not power, conviction. "But it's not." A pause, then, "Growth is." Silence fell again, but this time it shifted something, because that idea didn't conflict, it didn't align either, it simply didn't fit. And that created something new, a gap. "You redefine purpose," the voice said, not approving, not rejecting, not understanding. And that was the opening. Elena stepped forward, even as parts of her struggled to remain intact, because this was the real confrontation. Not strength, not survival, meaning. "If nothing changes," she said, "nothing improves." A pause, then, "Everything just stays the same." The presence didn't react, not immediately, because for the first time, this wasn't a variable, this wasn't instability, this was an argument, and arguments weren't part of its function. They were now. "You create divergence," the voice responded, still absolute, still precise. "But divergence creates outcomes we can't predict." Elena nodded slightly. "Yes." A breath, then, "That's the point." Silence. Long, deep, heavy, because that challenged everything it was, everything it did, everything it defined. And for the first time, something impossible happened. It didn't respond immediately. It paused, not calculating, not correcting, thinking. Because now, this wasn't about fixing an error. It was about deciding if the error was actually necessary. Elena felt it, that hesitation, that shift, and she knew this was it, the moment everything would be decided. "You are incomplete," the voice said, finally. A pause, then, "But you are also." Another pause, longer, stronger, potential. The word echoed, because that had never been used before,
not by something like this, not by something that defined reality. Potential meant change, possibility, growth. Everything it had rejected, now acknowledged. The external alpha lifted his head slightly, barely able to process what he was hearing, because this wasn't a battle. This was something else, something bigger. You will remain. And just like that, everything shifted, because that was permission, not survival, not escape, acceptance. But you will be observed. A pause. Then, because if you destabilize beyond recovery, silence tightened, and the final words came. We will remove everything. Not her, everything. Elena's breath caught, because that was the real cost, not her existence, theirs, all of it. She had just become something that, if she failed, would take reality down with her. The presence didn't fade, didn't leave. It simply stopped being directly engaged, returning to what it had always been, the background, the structure, the truth. And just like that, it was over. The sky felt normal again. The forest breathed. The wind moved. Reality continued. But nothing was the same. Elena stood still, processing, holding herself together, because now she understood something terrifying. She wasn't just part of the system. She wasn't outside it. She wasn't even replacing it. She was now something else entirely, a variable that reality itself was watching, and if she got it wrong, everything would be erased, not corrected, not changed, gone. And for the first time, the weight of what she had become was heavier than the power itself. The external alpha stepped beside her again, carefully. Elena. She didn't look at him, not yet, because she was still there, but only barely. I don't get to fail, she said quietly, and that was the most dangerous truth of all.
Reality didn't break. It adjusted, slowly, quietly, inevitably. And Elena felt every part of it, not as pressure, not as power, as responsibility. Because now, every change was connected to her. The forest wasn't the same. The bonds between wolves shifted again. Not unstable, not broken. Different, more fluid, less rigid, as if the world itself was learning to adapt, like she had. The external alpha stood nearby, watching everything, but more importantly, watching her, because something about her was fading, not physically, not visibly, but undeniably. You feel it too, he said. Not a question, a statement. Elena didn't deny it. I'm still changing, she replied. A pause, then, and I don't know where it stops. Silence followed, because that wasn't evolution. That was transformation on a different level, not part of the system, not outside it. The link itself, every bond, every shift, every change, flowing through her. And if that was true, then losing herself would mean losing all of it. The ground beneath her feet shifted slightly, not breaking, aligning, responding, because the system recognized her now, not as anomaly, not as error, as core. The external alpha's voice lowered, careful, controlled. If that's true, a pause, then you can't afford to lose yourself. Elena opened her eyes again, and this time they flickered, not with power, with instability. I don't know if I have a choice, she said, because she could feel it, that pull, that expansion, that constant shift. Every time she adapted, she lost something, a memory, a feeling, a piece of identity, and eventually there would be nothing left. The wind stilled suddenly, sharp, abrupt, because something else had changed. Not above, not beyond. Here, now. The alphas felt it instantly, that connection tightening, aligning, restructuring. What did you just do? One of them asked. Elena didn't answer, because she hadn't meant to, but it happened anyway. I didn't control it, she said slowly. A pause, then, it responded to me. And that confirmed it wasn't influencing the system anymore. She was becoming it. The alpha stepped in front of her, closer than before, more direct, more personal. Then hold on to something, he said. Her gaze lifted to him, confused. What? His expression hardened slightly, but there was something else beneath it, something real. Anything, he said. A pause, then, before there's nothing left to hold. The words landed deeper than anything before, because this wasn't about power, or survival, or evolution. This was about identity, and whether she could keep it. Elena looked at him, really looked, trying to anchor herself to something, to anything. And for a moment, something returned, faint but real. Emotion, recognition, him. Elena said quietly. A pause, then, I remember choosing. The alpha nodded once. That's enough, because choice meant self, and self meant she was still there, for now. The wind moved again. The system adjusted. The world continued shifting, but slower now, more controlled, more stable, because she was holding on to something, barely, but enough. Elena turned her gaze toward the horizon, toward everything that now depended on her, and for the first time she understood the full weight of it. Not just power, not just change, responsibility. If she evolved too far, she would disappear. If she stopped evolving, the system would collapse. There was no safe path, no perfect outcome, only balance, only control, only choice. And that she still had. For now. Elena said, not loudly, not dramatically, but with certainty. Because she had to. The alpha stood beside her, not as a protector, not as a subordinate, as something else, something that grounded her, reminded her, anchored her. And that might be the only reason she survived what came next. Because far beyond them, something was still watching, still waiting, not to erase, not to test, to see what she would become, and whether it was worth keeping or worth ending. And this time, the decision wouldn't be immediate. It would be earned, over time, through every choice she made, and every piece of herself she managed, or failed, to keep. Because now, the story wasn't about survival, it was about control, and whether she could remain herself while becoming something the world had never seen before, or if in the end, she would lose everything, including the reason she fought so hard to exist. And that was only the beginning of what came next.